What's up, man?
How are you?
Let me grab a
It's
water.
been a hot minute.
I know. I know. You've been busy since the kickoff, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it's on and off for me. So it's not I saw you on your little thing. It's not a full schedule type of thing, but it's on off. So I worked last week, I worked this week, but
Yeah.
I host coverage this week. So it's a little different than calling the shots. So it's I mean, I'm not going to complain and say that my life is hard. My life's pretty easy.
Yeah, we need to get
Got
out to
other stuff.
dinner again soon. I think we're going to see Kyle in a couple of weeks.
So he drove for me at Waste Management, or sorry, WM. So
Yeah.
he's caught the bug of wanting to come out and hang and drive golf carts and run logistics and stuff for me. And then this year I gave him my schedule. He said, well, let's do Phoenix. And I said, you really want to drive in that circus? He's like, yeah, let's do it. And unfortunately, like, it wasn't so much, I was worried about, like, you know, him running into drunk people or just getting annoyed by the chaos, but the weather was so stinking bad. I mean, we were miserable for 4 days. I mean, it was just, how can we get out of here as fast as possible and get back into a hot shower? Like, it was just not the way you'd want to draw it up. So unfortunately, weather's been the biggest story, honestly, this PGA Tour season. It's funny. I get the advanced screeners for Full Swing. So I've been trying to watch the whole series before it, I guess, debuts tomorrow or Thursday.
Yeah, it's the next few days.
And I'm reliving last year, and there was like so many good winners and so many good tournaments, and like, you know, stars were winning, and like everybody this year's like, I can't believe it. Like, it's, you know, there's no stars winning because they stole the talent. And I was like, well, a year ago this time, like, the only people that were still on the tour that are on Live now are Rahm and Hatton, really. I mean, that's about all the internet. But like, you know, it was the big Ricky year last year. There were a whole bunch of things that were going on. So I was like, man, I got to remind myself about this. It's just been kind of wild how this year has started, and the fact that the weather has been dog shit. I mean, it's been just awful, like everywhere for the most part.
I was texting him the whole time while he was there. I was like, dude, is it as bad as it looks? He was like, yeah, we're just literally just sitting inside right now trying to get dry.
It was so bad. And then that first day when it rained hard, we have these travel on like big umbrellas for PGA Tour radio. So they're nice, big gust busters. You know, they're good up to 50 miles an hour. Well, they were in a different kit that was going to, where was the next week? San Diego. And it was just the way the trucks sort of rotate. And that week, they typically do that all the time because they never need umbrellas in Scottsdale. Like, whoever thinks about packing the big umbrellas? First day, I mean, I've got this little dinky thing. One gust, that thing was gone. It was brutal. I was soaked to the bone.
I don't even think Saturday was the worst day, but it looked like Kiss and Smiley were like on the TV for like most of that day, and it seemed like they were just miserable out there. Like,
yeah, it was
in
cold.
The corner by
it was cold. I mean, it got better by the end of the week, but it was never a nice day. Do I sound okay, by the way? I've got a mic. I just didn't hook it up. I didn't know if this is good for you guys to do the AirPod stuff.
Good.
Good. Yeah, you sound fine.
Is Brian
I don't know where Brian. I think he is. I don't know where he is. I'll give him a call real quick.
Duster, are you based here?
No, I'm in Ocean City, Maryland.
Oh.
I'm still in Maryland. Yeah. Yeah. Let me give Rogers a call real quick.
Figure we just talk crab cakes, football, and lacrosse or something like that. Maryland-based podcast.
Yeah, right. Now, Dustin's actually he's really into golf, so he'll probably have the majority of the questions for you. Me and Brian are more just average. Like, we watch everything, but we're not as into it and invested as Dustin. He reads all the articles and listens to all the other podcasts and stuff. So
nice.
So yeah, we try to do a little bit of everything. Like, we have, I know we're Baltimore based, but like a couple of our friends play for some other major league teams, baseball teams. So we had like a Blue Jays guy on. We got another Blue Jays minor leaguer coming on next week. And then we have the Astros one of the Astros outfielders coming on here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. Yeah. So it should be good. I know we're, like I said, we're Baltimore based. We cover all that, but we're trying to get, some actual people who know what they're talking about on here.
Yeah. How long you guys been doing it?
About a month and a half now.
Oh, okay.
Say
Yeah.
2 months. Yeah, we brand new just started.
Did a pod for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was fun. I mean, it was, as you guys know, it's like do it for fun, and if it becomes something more than fun, then great. But I was just,
Yeah.
it gave me something to talk about. I wasn't doing a lot of talk shows at the time, and now I'm doing way more talk again on Sirius XM. So when that kind of started to pick back up, in addition to the live stuff, I'd kind of tapped out the guests
Yeah.
and stuff I wanted to do. And then I wrote a book, which was kind of based off of all the stuff I learned from a podcast. And so it all kind of cycled into a whole bunch of different things. So that was, so it was good. But now I've got the itch to do it again. But I've got some interesting ideas. I actually had a meeting last week with some folks at the Ringer about a podcast
sweet.
idea and a few other things. So there's some stuff that's floating around out there. But at this point in time in the game, it's like I would really love to do something different. And I think
Yeah.
being different is really hard right now. You know, it's because there's a lot out there. So
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of our thing. We're like, well, Dustin's in Ocean City. Some of our buddies are still like in downtown Baltimore. I'm obviously out here. So like, if anything, it's just an excuse for us to get together, have a drink on Zoom, and let's just talk sports. So
Yeah, it's been awesome. That would be cool if you do
But-
something with the Ringer. I listen to the Fairway Rolling Show every week with House and Hubbard. So
yeah, these are good dudes.
yeah,
Funny thing is, I don't listen to any of their sports pods. I listen to all their other stuff. I mean, I hear those guys when they have something they want to say. It's like, it's weird in the golf space. There's very few golf podcasts out there that are interviewing people or saying anything that, from a professional standpoint, that I don't already, know about or am in the middle of. Like
yeah,
it's funny. When you were off for a second, I was watching Full Swing right now because I've got the advanced screeners, and I know everything. There's very few things I learned from watching it. They teach you about the background of this particular player, or you get to meet their wife or something. And it's like, well, I kind of know all of this stuff already. So it's like, what are they going to do that's a little bit, different? So when I get obsessed with these other places, I'm like into the pop culture stuff or the 90s music stuff or like all the things. They're like, these are the things I want to learn about because I don't know anything about it,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know where Brian is. He might be in a meeting or something with work. So if you guys want to start
That's
up,
fine.
and then if he
Yeah,
joins
we can-
on, I mean, we've already been talking, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally
Yeah.
one of my questions was if he got the advanced screener. And if there's anything we need to be looking for. 'Cause I'm
I don't-
excited. I've been watching season 1 over again just to kind of get refreshed for this year.
I don't think I'm giving too much away here. Contractually, I can't say a whole lot, but I was really the first episode goes so heavy into the split and this whole like PGA Tour versus live players, which is really not the case. Like they really try and like sell this storyline of these guys in the tour want to beat these guys and live and prove it. And they gloss over a lot of the good, like they gloss over so much stuff at the Masters. We may come back to the Masters for all I know, but they turn the Masters into Brooks against Rory effectively, even though Rory misses the cut, but that's the whole build up to it all. And then Brooks going on to win the PGA Championship. And I just found it to be like really like, it's just salacious, right? It's like a tabloid sort of show. But I read a couple other reviews that led me to go back into it. And then the second one was way better. And then now they're supposed to get into some more player centric stuff where I think we might see some things that are interesting. Like really, I will say this so far, I feel like the players have been far more open and they've been a little bit more candid than they were in the first season, which is, I think, super helpful to the end product. But I hated the fact that they led with this just completely salacious, like, let's not even focus on all the good stories that came out of these two majors. We're only going to make it's live against the PGA Tour guys. And that to me was really bad. But I just watched the second and third episodes and they were really, really good. I'd say really, really good. They were significantly better. So I think it's a better product long term.
I think that's bizarre that they hammered home the Rory versus Brooks stuff too, especially because I think Rory and Brooks are like pretty notably like good friends and
They're
media.
competitively friendly. Like they're never hanging
Yeah.
out with one another, but they respect each other a hell of a lot. And I think I just saw Brooks do this thing with Claire Rogers. Like she's doing some sort of like eat ice cream interview on YouTube. And she said, if you could play golf with anybody like forever. Like if there's one person you're going to play competitive golf, and he was like, Rory. He's like, I always want to show my best against Rory. It was a very insightful sort of thing into it. So I think there's just respect there between the two of them. That is which is really healthy. But yeah, when you spin it up as, oh, they hate each other. And like, it's the worst possible player from Liv to be the guy that you're saying, this is who Liv is. Like, he couldn't care less about Liv.
Yeah.
Like, he really couldn't. Like, in fact, if he had to do it all over again, I don't think he would do it, but he was at a really, really low point and he couldn't turn down the money, and it was a ton of money, and he's proven that he can win without it. And it was fine. But like, if you wanted to really turn this into Liv versus the PGA Tour, then you need to follow around Phil or Bryson, Sergio, like any of these guys that are dug in and say, this is the greatest thing ever. And instead they make Brooks the face of it. And Brooks didn't even mention Liv in any of the press stuff at the PGA. He's like, I'm here as Brooks. I don't care about where I'm playing golf. Like, I'm Brooks Koepka, 4-time major champion. I'm trying to win my fifth. Talk to me about me, about where I'm playing golf.
Trying to win majors here. I don't care about anything else. And
he's not wearing his team smash gear, like DJ's showing up wearing 4 Aces gear, and Brooks is showing up wearing Nike. Like, it's
yeah. I was even going to say, it doesn't even seem like DJ is that invested in Liv. He's just like, yeah, cool. I did this for my family, so I can spend more time with them.
DJ's not invested in anything. DJ's invested in DJ. DJ's invested in being a dude. Like, and that's just what he is. And he's a cool guy. Like, he's just a cool dude that is never thinking about what the broader issue is here. Like, Paulina worries about all that shit. Like, Paulina is certainly worried about what they're saying on social media about him and everything. But DJ is just like, you know what? Show up, cash the check, live a good life, treat people nicely, move on to the next thing.
Yeah. He seems pretty laid back.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
Do you want to do our official entrance? We'll splice it in.
That was all off the record. If you air any of that stuff, it's off the record.
All right, all right. Welcome to another week of Gary Williams Stole My Lawn Furniture podcast. Today we have Will Haskett. He's a SiriusXM correspondent for the PGA Tour. If you want to give yourself a little intro, go ahead. It's up to you.
Oh, yeah. No, thanks for having me. When I saw the name of the podcast, I thought it was Gary Williams, formerly of Golf Channel, who's now a colleague of mine at SiriusXM, not the Maryland Terrapins basketball coach, Gary Williams. So I'm really excited. I thought we were going to get a Gary Williams, some story about you guys on a bender with my GW, not Maryland's GW, but I got a little confused there. But appreciate all of our circles sort of connecting to be able to make this happen, and happy I can make some time for you guys. But I've been broadcasting golf on the PGA Tour for over a decade now. I've always wanted to broadcast sports. I tell people I'm one of those rare, weird people who decided he wanted to do something when he was 13 years old and stuck with it and kind of grinded, called a lot of sports. I've called 14 different sports in my career, but right now I predominantly am in the golf space. So a lot of it on PGA Tour radio, done some PGA Tour live, feature groups for the LPGA on ESPN Plus, major championships for ESPN. A few different places here and there. So grew up playing golf competitively in it, worked in golf right out of college as an assistant pro to sort of afford my broadcasting habit in the winters, if you will. And so golf's always been a big part of my life. And so now I would definitely say that sort of my brand, if there is any as a broadcaster, is in the space. So like you guys, we were talking before we came on, I had a podcast for 4 years called The Perfect Number that really just delved into all the higher level stuff, analytics, and all of these little ways that guys at the professional level are getting better, 1% better kind of on a daily basis. I wrote a book called The Science of Golf that was kind of those 4 years of talking to players and people within it and just sort of how the game has evolved. I know you guys are big into baseball. I think baseball and golf are kind of on the same pillars together when it comes to advanced decision-making, analytics, how data has changed the way the game is played, how it's taught, athleticism, all of that sort of stuff. And so that stuff fascinates me. I would say today I'm probably most fascinated with psychology. I think it's the one thing that still differentiates guys. But again, that's more than just an introduction. But I appreciate you having me. Yeah. And I've been on the PGA Tour. This is my 11th season officially on the PGA Tour, but been calling golf for, 15, 16 years, all the way back to the college and amateur ranks.
What were some of the other sports that you were calling? I know you did Butler for a little while too. I know when you guys were there, you and for anybody else, one of our good mutual buddies, Kyle, they were roommates in college at Butler. So I know that's something you were doing while you were there.
Yeah, I did radio for Butler for 6 years when I was a student and then right out of college. And then I was doing the TV package for the Horizon League, which is the league that Butler was in when they made their 2 Final Four runs. So doing a lot of the games on TV through those years. Still have a relationship with the Horizon League here in town. I mean, they're battling the same issues that any small to mid-major conference has, especially today with the way that the money is sort of flowing upwards. It's a common theme. I tell people a lot of times, when people ask, I know we'll get into live in the PGA Tour and stuff, and you talk about money. I find a lot of similarities in what we've seen in professional golf to what we've seen in college athletics and NIL, and just sort of where the money is tracking and what that has done. So I think take away from the shine of the purity of the sport in and of itself. But yeah, so I've done everything from obviously golf and basketball and football, the big ones. I really enjoy calling volleyball. I think volleyball is an incredibly entertaining sport to watch, men's volleyball is insane. The athleticism and the power at the highest levels of that sport, but even high level Division I women's volleyball is incredibly entertaining between the power, the finesse, the speed, the communication. And I've done a lot of obscure stuff. I mean, I've done diving. If you've ever been flipping through ESPN over the last couple of years and caught axe throwing, I was the guy calling axe throwing on ESPN for a couple of years there. So there's been a bunch of random stuff. So I'm a play-by-play guy by trade. And I always say, if it's a score, it's a competition, then I can probably find a way to call it.
That's awesome. You got to throw axe throwing. I think I saw that on the Ocho last year when they did that.
I didn't do that show. At the Ocho show, I was at a golf tournament, but they had world championships and US Opens and stuff. And they had knife throwing too. They started adding knives and axes. I mean, it was a whole bunch of hillbillies throwing sharp things. It was a good time.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
That's so bizarre. So are you going to be able to go to Augusta this year? And have you been there in the past? I see the flag behind you. Have you gotten to play there, or have you just gotten to work there? What's your experience there?
I've called 2 Masters. The last one I was on site for was actually, and that's the flag, was Jordan Spieth's win in 2015. I've done some stuff remotely for it, but have not been back on the ground now in 9 years. So that was the last time I was actually on site. So I have worked it. I've worked a couple of US Opens, a ton of PGA championships. That's probably the one I've called the most in terms of the majors. It's an interesting industry. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people that do what I do. There are a lot of people that call it golf because it's so extensive, but I don't think people sometimes realize is how many different entities there are in the sport. I think if anything, the split between the PGA Tour and Live Golf has sort of shown a light on how powerful the major championships are. And then people start to realize then that the majors are run by 4 completely separate entities, are not the PGA Tour or not Live Golf either. So you have all of these different broadcast contracts, different media outlets that are covering different majors based off of which of the governing bodies have contracts. And so there's a whole lot of different moving parts. And so you don't have a lot of symmetry sometimes. So it's not dissimilar to say watching the NFL and you're going to get your NFC package on Fox and you're going to get your AFC package on CBS for the most part. And then you've got NBC guys and stuff, and why you have a different channel every 4 years for the Super Bowl. Well, you've got a whole lot of cooks in the kitchen. So that's kind of where it gets into it. So I've never gone to the Open. I've never been to Scotland and seen that. So that's probably the next thing to check off the list since I've done 3 of the 4 majors to this point in time would be to get over there and cover that.
Yeah, we were supposed to go to the PGA Championship, and I don't think we're going to be able to now. We got tickets for Thursday, I think, but. Are you going to be on that one in Louisville?
I'll be on site. I was actually right before this podcast, I was talking travel logistics with the team down there. So I'll be doing featured group coverage for ESPN that week. So there's a whole host of streams that week.
Oh, we'll be watching for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So did you get to cover like when Phil won at Winged Foot or when Tiger made that charge on Brooks at Belle Reve in 2018? Were you there for those?
So I was not in the queue for those. So my first PGA would have been Keegan's win in Atlanta. So that was in 2011. That was at Kiowa in 2012 for Rory's win. And then there were a few years where I wasn't in the mix because it was changing hands with who had it. And then when ESPN took over production again for the PGA Championship several years ago, they brought me back in, and by several, I think it's 4 now. So I guess I would have restarted Kiwa again, maybe would have been the first one I got back onto. And that was Phil's win, which was unbelievable, which unfortunately, I think Phil's choices since then have taken a lot of that win should be studied forever for how incredible it was, how amazing it was. His psychological approach that week, him slow playing Brooks in the final round was kind of, fascinating to me in a lot of respects. And yet, less than a year later, everything was kind of blown up, which is just insane how things have changed so rapidly since that point.
Yeah, it's crazy. Even today, I mean, I saw this morning it came out. Greg Norman sent a letter to the live players saying that they gave up, backed out of their request for accreditation for the official world golf ranking. How do you think that changes the landscape of things moving forward long term?
It's a great question because I think, a year ago at this time, we didn't know where things were. And then June 6th happened. And everybody thinks it's going to be this rapid sort of reconciliation between the tours. Yeah. And then the PGA Tour since then has changed who's sort of making decisions. The players have taken a majority of the control and they've had to kind of catch themselves up to speed in this negotiating process, which I think really slowed things with Liv because it put everything on the brakes on. Obviously, it slowed it to the point where Liv said, we don't have any problem poaching more players. So we're going to flex our pocketbooks again and show you that at the end of the day, we've got the money to be serious here. We're going to buy John Rahm and a few other players and show you just how much we can disrupt things. But then the tour getting, $1.5 billion guaranteed out of their new investment partners in the SSG group, no one has, I think, great leverage right now. I think at various points in this, there was one side that you could say, okay, they're in such a good position. The other side has to come to the table. Or I think June 6th was both sides realized they were in a bad position and let's come together in all of this. And now as more cooks have gotten in the kitchen, it's really changed perspective. So you've got the Greg Norman side of things who's holding in and saying like, I don't want to get rid of this product. Like I still believe in what we're doing here and I'm not going to cave and let's keep this thing going and talking his bankrollers on this one. And you have the PGA Tour saying, okay, with this money coming in, we now know that Scotty's not going, JT's not going, Jordan's not going. I don't think Rory's going. I know there's smoke. The smoke's not real in my opinion, but I can understand why people would start to create smoke. Maybe Rory would think about jumping. Alexander, all these guys aren't going at this point in time because they're paying themselves. They're paying themselves huge sums of money and now they're vested. Yeah. So what today's news, I guess, showed me is that Liv doesn't care to get to that point where they wanted to appease their own players, that you've seen the pathway of if you're Joaquin Niemann, you can play your way into these majors if you don't have the exemptions. You still have 15 guys in that tour that have exemptions for the foreseeable future into all the main guys, some of the majors, right? All of your main guys. And if you can continue paying out the purses that you can, then does it really matter? So the game of golf continues to be fractured. It continues to be hurt. Liv banked on the idea that people would go to where the quote unquote stars were. And that's not the case. I think it's proven that their value is not as strong as they thought they were. And yet they've paid them as if their value is astronomical. And in doing that, it's then split up professional golf and the PGA Tour, and it undercut the PGA Tour's product, which I think was a little bit undervalued when everybody was together as to how much the structure, the familiarity of courses, all of the other infrastructure pieces that Liv has failed to rev up, statistics, social media branding, all of these things. We didn't realize, or those players didn't realize, the PGA Tour was actually uplifting their brand too. And so what we've done is we've taken all these guys and paid them too much money to where they'll never play for less again, while also killing the structure of, not killing, but hurting the structure of the PGA Tour that was actually providing them some value. So it's a long-winded way of me saying, I think both sides are entrenched right now. It's like World War I at this point in time. We're just going to stare at each other across this abyss. We've got our tunnels, we've got our trenches, and we're going to fire this thing out for a little bit longer until one side caves in negotiations. I think if there's one good thing is I don't really feel it's very combative in 2024 as it once was. I think it's just two sides that are willing to just go and live in their own existence. And it's sad to me from a Liv standpoint, because I've always made the sort of petulant child comparison here when it comes to it. I have little kids and we put rules on our kids that may or may not be perfectly fair. But when they come in and say, I'm not going to follow your rule because I just don't want to, even though everything is structured. I don't want to go 25 miles an hour down the road where they still have a school posted sign for a school that's not there anymore. The cop pulls me over. He can still point to the sign and say, you're not following the rules. And I don't have a leg to stand on to be able to say anything about it. Is that Liv knew the system. Liv knew what the requirements were to adhere to that system. Liv knew that it's always been a 2-year waiting period for any tour to get world golf ranking points, even if you're abiding by all the rules in the system. And yet they just expected everybody to bend over backwards and say, oh, don't worry, we'll change everything for this new structure. Yeah. And that to me is just sort of petulant. It's the ego that has driven a lot of the highest level decision makers in all of it. And this is, look, I'll say they deserve world golf ranking points. We should have figured, we should figure out a way to do it, but they should also make better concessions. They should structure their tour in a more competitive, balanced way, be able to do it. And so again, I think it's just, this is the longest answer to a pretty simple question, but I think where Liv is today and making that decision is we are fine with what we are. Like we now have a lot of big names. They probably feel pretty good at coming off the week they did because they got attention because of Anthony Kim. And it just sort of bolstered their thing as being like, let's not even mess with it anymore because we're going to continue picking off wins in the court of public opinion. Because all they've done is just drive a whole lot of dissatisfaction and a lack of trust in the rest of the organization of professional golf, that being all of the heads talk into the world golf rankings. And so they're going to play that. You've seen that politically, like modern, it's become a very sound modern political strategy, and Liv's going to do that. They're going to play the victim card. And they're going to do a whole bunch of stuff to rile up support from their base. And they're going to echo chamber that support to themselves until we finally get back to the negotiation table and figure it all out.
Yeah, I just don't think they're going to get anywhere until they keep playing they got to get off of playing at 3:30 in the morning and playing on the CW and stuff like this. They're just not going to get the eyes. They could be right here with bringing these guys over. But if they're playing at 3:30 in the morning in Hong Kong or wherever they're at, nobody's going to, it's not like the Open or like the Ryder Cup or whatever. We're not going to wake up that early to go watch it. It's not that meaningful to us yet.
Yeah. And their biggest supporters, but the biggest supporters say this is all part of a global thing. And so most of their supporters are international and they say that golf had become too Americanized. Well, the contrarian viewpoint to that is the reason why golf became so Americanized is not just because of the Tiger effect. It's because a majority of the money that's going into the game is coming from corporate dollars in this country. Or corporate dollars that want to have visibility in this country. So there, again, needs to be some sort of balance there. You're never going to find somebody who's willing to pay $20 million purses for a tournament in Jeddah, with the exception of the PIF. Like it's going to be really hard to find corporate sponsors to take you to some of these ends of the world. Now, they've had tremendous success in Australia, and we should all be looking at ways to expand on that. So if there's some sort of unification, that unification should involve all these guys going to Australia once or twice a year. Maybe South Africa, the DP World Tour has done a really good job of expanding their sort of reach. So there's ways to sort of piggyback on some of the things that are going on here. But to expect there to be this schedule where a third of it is only in the United States, a third of it is in a whole lot of far-reaching places, you're just never going to be able to sustain the ROI for what you're paying these guys right now. And they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis to try and force feed this and say this works. Well, it works as long as you don't turn off the teat. Like as long as the money teat's still pouring out, you're fine. But I just don't see it moving, that way long term, unless you have some sort of reconciliation here, because the money's here, the brand is here, and a majority of that's going to come from this place.
Hey,
we're Brian Rogers is here. Yeah.
Something's fucked up with my laptop, so I got to go this route.
Don't worry about it. You're good.
Anyway, like I guess if we got to give Liv any kind of credit, they got these PGA players some income. So,
they made guys ridiculously rich. You're talking John Rahm going to make more over the course of 5 or 6 years than everybody not named Shohei Ohtani in Major League Baseball. Yeah. Like it just makes zero sense. He's going to make more money than Patrick Mahomes. For on-course performance, That's insane to me. It's absolutely insane.
And the news today, we were talking about
Go ahead. Sorry, Dustin.
Sorry, the news today about the official world golf ranking stuff, that's not going to affect the top guys, like we said before. It's not going to affect John Rahm and Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka, but it could affect guys like Taylor Gooch, who's won a couple times last year, who's made a lot of incendiary remarks, but also you kind of signed up for what you got. Like you knew going over there, they didn't have accreditation with the official world golf ranking system, and you knew it was going to take at least 2 years, and now it looks like it's going to be even longer if it ever happens at all.
And Taylor Gooch, like he can look at his own tour. Like Joaquin Niemann is the blueprint. Like go out, showcase yourself, go win something else. And then I think even though the press releases for the PGA Championship and the Masters are not going to say anything about their live exploits, Joaquin Niemann also showing up and boat racing those guys twice this year, or I should say he was in a playoff with Sergio. But being the best player on that tour so far this year, combined with all of the stuff that you've done to show that you're playing against other fields and other tours and doing things, is, I think it certainly gets factored into it. But again, if you just win 4 live tournaments and you only make your 16 starts on live, no one's going to recognize those tournaments because it's a self-feeding entity that is really, really hard to measure. Even when we say, look at the star power that's on here, it's really difficult for me to say how good they're playing when you don't have churn week in and week out of fields to actually have the sort of meritocracy based sort of system the way that it is. So I commend Joaquin Niemann. I don't know why he's running his mouth the way that he is about, like, I'm not getting any respect. Like, dude, you got an exemption. Then you win again and say, well, I'm not getting into the majors. Like it's on a timetable. It's not like they're just going to get the PGA just gives all their exemptions on January 1. Like it was coming, like it's the next major, like it was going to eventually happen. But you know what? Like he's been pretty outspoken about it and he's still getting the exemptions for it. So who knows? Maybe that'll inspire Taylor Gooch to say more things.
Who knows? I don't think the average person's going to feel bad for a guy who won 4 or 16 probably-ish $1 million last year on whatever professional golf tour. Maybe he does deserve to be in the majors, but there's not really much we can do. Brian, you have anything to ask Will? Brian's on, by the way.
Are these live guys allowed to get out of their contracts? Do you have any information on that? If they want to come back on over and play on the PGA Tour, can they just up and leave the contract?
I have no idea. The agents wrote them, but the agents were also the ones that were motivated to cash their percentage on some of those too. So I think that was a lot of for some of the guys that I know are probably over there with some buyer's remorse is a hard thing to say because they're all making more money than they probably would have made playing on the PGA Tour. So I don't think anybody can have true buyer's remorse. But for the guys that are like, man, I didn't realize that it was going to be like this. I didn't realize that the crowds are going to be like this. I didn't realize it was going to be so unserious. That I'd miss things. I know that there are players that lament not being able to play on PGA Tour events. I don't know what the language is, but I'd be the first to say that if I was signing a contract with something that was associated with the Saudi government, I wouldn't be too quick to get out of that contract. I'd be making sure that I'm crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's before I walk away from that point.
I don't blame you there. I don't think anybody does. I think for the most part, it just sucks for the fans. I think the fans of golf are the ones that are missing out the most, the players playing each other on a regular basis. And the product still is good. I mean, like you said, the weather has been a big problem this year in this season. Before we came on, I think we were talking about that. But yeah, I mean, the product's still been good. And this week, I mean, as big as any other tournament, any of the non-major tournaments that you're going to have for the PGA is Arnold Palmer. So we'll see if the season can kind of turn around in terms of getting more viewers and getting more eyes on the sport. All right. Do you have any stories from Arnold Palmer from Bay Hill? Have you been there before? You said you're gonna be there this week.
Yeah, I'm hosting our coverage on PGA Tour Radio this week. It's a cool place. I don't actually work this one very often because I typically have a basketball conflict this time of year with it being conference tournament season, but kind of squeezed it in this coming weekend for us. I've spent a lot of time there. There was a couple of years where I was doing some work for Golf Channel and they would put you up at Bay Hill and I was doing like the morning show. So then I'd be off at 10 the whole day. And so the coolest part of Bay Hill to me is on the range, they always keep the farthest right bay on the range roped off for Mr. Palmer. So even since he's passed, there's still an entire spot at the end of the range that is roped off. You can't use it. It's got his clubs, roll them out there every sort of day. And so when I had my sticks down there, and I was there a lot of times in the summer, so you're not allowed to play because it's just ridiculously awful hot. So I just go hit balls for a little bit and putt and chip. And I would always go and I'd warm up in the bay next to that one. It was like the closest you could get to sort of greatness. I never got to interview him. I was in his presence, but it's with a group of people. Unlike I've gotten to interview Jack Nicklaus a couple of times and be with him a little bit more often, but I never really got to spend time at all around or listen or shake the hand of Arnold Palmer. So it was always the closest that I got to him. So, I mean, it's obviously related to this tournament. This is a really interesting golf course. I don't think it's the best golf course we play in Florida. I think being associated with Arnie has really carried its brand forward a lot. I think TPC Sawgrass is awesome. The course in Tampa at Innisbrook is fantastic. And even last week at PGA National, it's such a brute. So this week, it should be good, but we always bring out a good field because of his legacy. And now we're in this sort of signature event run. And I thought it's only going to be a 69-man field. So somehow we're losing bodies from a signature event standpoint, which is, I think, something that will be interesting to see if they adapt or adjust that moving forward into 2025. But I expect this week, the weather looks, knock on wood, halfway decent. Because this golf course is typically a first shot type of golf course, it really rewards great driving of the golf ball. I'd like to think that, Scotty, Rory, even a Cameron Young type who hasn't won yet, but looked pretty good last week, that we get, 4 or 5 of those names at or near the top of the leaderboard come the weekend. So we can kind of have that first week, that big hoorah, like here we are. This is what golf is supposed to look like in 2024.
Yeah.
Well, damn, Cam Young's 25-1 right now. That might be the bet of the week. See if we can.
I have a couple of long shots down, and Cam Young at 25-1. He came, I think, in 4th last week, at Cognizant Classic. He's one of the best drivers of the golf ball in the world. He's had 2 straight top 15 finishes at this course. I think the lineage, especially for this kind of course, it's usually plays a little tougher than most of the courses on the tour. I think the last couple winners have been in single digits under par, which in this day and age doesn't happen very often in golf. I really like him as a long shot to win 25-1. And if you want to take him as like a top 10, top 20 kind of guy, I think he's going to be in the mix this week. I mean, Rory's played well here. You can't really bet on Scotty Scheffler in golf anymore because he's 6-1 to win tournaments, which is ridiculous. It's like Tiger versus the field numbers. I mean, you're just not getting any value out of that kind of stuff. I don't know what else to say other than, I mean, there's a couple guys that have good finishes here that drive the ball really well that I like down the board. Keegan plays really well here historically. Harris English plays really well here. Those guys are down looking at like 50-1 odds. Maybe not put a bet on them to win, but top 10, top 20 kind of guys. And they're in good form this year too. Keegan got a top 5, I think, earlier in this year, and Harris English came in second in this tournament last year. In his last 2 starts, he's been in the top 20. So yeah.
The betting market's going crazy right now because Minwoo Lee, from a DFS standpoint, is priced in the 6,000s because it's the small field this week. Nearly won last week. Hit a country mile.
Yeah,
I don't know if his aggressive style of play will go great this week, given how the rough is typically up on this golf course. But I know from an ownership standpoint in DFS, it's going to be insane how many people are going to have him. But I'm assuming that value then down the board means that, again, there's virtually no cut. Even backdoor sort of top 10s and top 20s are going to be in play this week because the guys get to go out early on Saturdays and Sundays, and all you have to do is just put together 2 decent rounds at the beginning of the week to not get clipped. So I know that there's going to be a lot of investment. I'm imagining that Vegas's numbers are going down pretty rapidly on Minwoo from where he started yesterday when he qualified, because he wasn't in the field until yesterday because he made it in because of his finish this week. So I would imagine his numbers plummeting right now because it opened pretty dang high.
Yeah.
Where's he at, Dustin?
Minwoo is, I don't know. I actually had him as a top 10 last week and he hit, but I don't know. I don't have his numbers off the top of my head. But he's down the board a little bit further. He's at least 30 to 1. He's not in the 25 to 1 or higher range.
35 to 1.
Anyway, 35 to 1. There you go.
I'm guessing
you like
open higher
Minwoo.
than that. Yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely mashes the golf ball. And based on his stature, it just doesn't really make any sense to me, but it's freaking awesome. He's awesome to watch. And he's a huge fan favorite. I think at Waste Management, he was getting a lot of attention there. He was a big fan favorite there. Yeah, I think I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Let's go.
Unless you guys want to talk about, we
could talk baseball too. I mean, I know you guys it's a big baseball show. I was like, I'm a
We
diehard
like
Cubs
talking.
fan. So if we want to get into projecting,
all right.
Cubs farm system versus with the Orioles farm system, anything like that, we can get into, deep down in the farm, stuff like that.
I don't know much about
I
the
can do
Cubs
that
farm
too.
system, but I know that ours is highly regarded as probably the best. I know. Are you excited about the Cody Bellinger contract? Are you kind of worried that he's just going to have a great year and leave?
I'm ecstatic about it because I don't think he was worth. No, I take that back. That's too harsh of a statement. I'm excited about the contract because I think the Cubs were probably in a bit of a roster crunch and a salary crunch in 3 or 4 years if you sign him to a 6 or 7 year sort of deal. I think it gives them a ton of insurance in case he regresses to where he was at the end of his Dodgers time, as opposed to last year. You can get out from underneath this thing pretty quickly without having to spend a ton of money. But I also thought that he was an absolute necessity to have on this team in 2024. So if you're sitting there saying to yourself, we have to have him this year, I don't know if I want him in 2026. Like, how are we going to deal with Scott Boras and make that contract happen? I don't think it could have worked out any better than for the entire market to kind of sour on him and all of Boras's clients, and got a way to sort of get into it. So it's another pillow deal because, if he rakes this year, then he walks away from it. And if he's average, then maybe he take $30 million for one more year. If he likes what the team is doing and then still hits the open market at like 31? I think he's only 29 or 28 or 29 right now. So he can still hit the open market.
He's under 30.
Yeah. So I think it works great for the Cubs. It obviously would have worked a whole lot better for Boras if he'd signed a 6 or 7 year deal. I don't think it's a bad deal for Cody. And then allows him to put him in center and maybe first, and you fill whichever hole you have based off of whichever prospect doesn't end up coming to fruition as quickly as you had wanted this year. So I absolutely love the contract for the Cubs.
How long?
The guy's just gonna hit.
How surprised were you with the David Ross news in the offseason?
Oh, I mean, I think we all were taken aback by it. I know, you guys know the sport better than I do. Like, I didn't watching as many Cubs games as I do. I mean, it's the one team that honestly makes my heart flutter. Like, I'm so desensitized now to sporting events, having called them for so long, that it's really hard. I mean, good events still get you going. Like, you want to make the good call. You get a little nervy here, but it's the only team, right, that I still have that I'm like emotionally moved by. Like when they won the series in 16, or, I'll throw stuff at the TV. Like, there's very few things get me riled up like that as a sports fan, being a Cubs fan. But I don't remember last year being like, wow, what a terrible decision by David Ross. But every time I would read, the beat writers or the guys in the Athletic or whoever sort of following it, they'd talk about, overuse of the bullpen, becoming too dependent on 2 or 3 guys that he threw them out. And then that's why their bullpen was terrible last month of the season, because he overused the guys, over leveraged them in the summer. So like all of these little things. And so, he obviously was fired, and the whole thing went down really quickly. So if he had gotten fired and they didn't have a manager for a week, I would have been like, oh, but instead, like, when we get our brains beat in by Milwaukee for however many years, just watching Counsell just sit there emotionless and just making all the right calls, like over and over and over again. So I was like, okay, I mean, I'm willing to give it another try, because emotionally, like, I loved Rossi as a player and then as a manager, but I couldn't sit here and tell you one thing that I was like, oh, this is why he was so great managing that team. So if the front office is like, this guy's infinitely better, going to make our players better, and is going to make better decisions in terms of usage, then I'm fine with it.
I think the move is really made because he couldn't manage the bullpen, and that's a surprising statement coming from a manager who was a catcher. And I mean, normally catchers know exactly how to use the same guys. You usually see the position players, such or like infielders, like a Craig Townsend, mismanage a bullpen. So I'm very surprised by that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But I mean, just you can't deny the stats. I mean, they had 3 guys that they really trusted last year, like Leiter, Azalea, and I'm trying to remember the third guy. And it was like 7th, 8th, 9th inning. And I was watching every game in June and July, and there they were. And then August, there they were, like every 7th, 8th, and 9th. Like you'd see the same guys like over and over again anytime they had a high leverage game. And they were in a ton of high leverage games because they weren't a powerhouse team that just goes out there and wins a whole bunch of games by 5 or 6 runs, or they don't, outside of Justin Steele, they didn't have a starter that would give them, these quality 7 or 8 inning starts and give your bullpen a breather. And then all of a sudden, like they start to tank in September and you're like, there's no way they can blow this. Right. And they blow this. And then those same guys are either on the IL or they're coming in and they don't have the same stuff. And I was like, looking back on it, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense now. But you could also say, did they have enough horses in the first place? Like, did you have enough guys down in Iowa? Did you have enough guys, to stretch out to be able to do it? I think they have better depth this year too. So who knows if it was the manager or if it was also a personnel situation.
Yeah, and Council's been so good with, a small market team. Like you said, it feels like he's just always, no matter how bad or like you don't know anybody on that team, that team's always in the race every single year. It seems like.
By the way, I had a producer, Sirius XM, who's a massive Orioles fan and had done some stuff with the radio network and everything like that. And last year I was trying to convince him before Stroman went on the injured list. I was trying to convince him to like make some sort of trade. I was like, I thought Stroman would have been good before he got hurt. I was like, Stroman for that Orioles team last year, I thought would have been a pretty good deal, but I was also trying to pluck like a top 4 or 5 prospect out of your guys' farm system for it. There was like a couple of left-handed slugger you guys have that plays the outfield. I was like, I like that kid or something.
Kierstead. Yeah, that's
Kierstead. That's the guy. I was like, who said no? Mark is stretching for Kierstead right now. He says no.
Honestly, all of Orioles Nation probably would have taken that until he came up at the end of last year, and because he's been hurt for essentially 2 years after he had that heart thing going on. So everybody was like, "Is this kid even going to play?" And then he just blazed through the minors last year and got called up towards the end. It was pretty decent. So
and seeing him in person,
donkey.
He is a massive donkey.
Yeah, I know. I was shooting pie in the sky. But at one point in time last year, like Stroman had like a sub 3. It was, like 9-1 before all of a sudden it went really bad. So
I didn't think he was going to do that well, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Stroman.
You think, well, Stroman's on the Yankees now, so we hate him.
Yes.
But do you think your rotation is going to be able to hold up in the NL Central? You think you'll be able to with the Cardinals and the Brewers this year with the, you guys signed him up. Imanaga, I can't pronounce his name correctly. Do you think your rotation is going to be able to hold up? I know you mentioned Justin Steele earlier. We went to me and Brooks were able to go to a game in Chicago last year, and he completely shoved against the Orioles, and we lost that game. I think won the second. But yeah, what do you think about the rotation going into the year? Not super confident.
They just need a ton of bodies. Like at this point in time, it's like, unless you've got 2 or 3 guys that are just elite Hall of Famer studs, at this point, it's like you need 10 starters, right? Like you need 10 guys can go and start games for it. You got to have guys with options. You got to have guys, you just need to build pitching depth to survive in the modern sort of game. And so I love Steele. You got an ageless Kyle Hendricks somewhere in that rotation, but they signed Jamison Tyon to a 4-year deal last year. And that's a guy that typically doesn't break down. He blew his elbow out once, but like it's typically been a high inning sort of guy and looked really good in the second half. Need him. The lefty they got from Japan he's got stuff, but then his first start was last week and against the Dodgers. So they roll him out against the Dodgers team and he like fans Freddie Freeman in the first, but then, a couple of hard hits and fastball that he can't elevate. I read an interesting about it. Against the strike zone in Japan, they don't give high strikes as much as they do in Major League Baseball. It's a little bit tighter zone at the numbers. And so he's having to learn how to throw the strike a little bit higher because he's trying to throw to the very upper end of the zone. Well, the upper end of the Japanese zone gets sent out 480 feet in Major League Baseball.
Yeah,
so he's trying to get a little bit.
They're used to hitting those high fastballs.
So he's got to learn that. So I think he's going to be one of those guys where he's a 500 pitcher this year in his first year because there's a couple of games where he just gets shelled. He doesn't locate it very good. And the next game, it's a good sort of shutdown. So we've got a couple of young guys, and probably need to lean on those guys, but a few of them haven't looked great so far in spring training. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that their rotation is where they want it to be, but I'm also not truly scared of the NL Central. I mean, Milwaukee got rid of everybody that was of any value outside of Yelich in that lineup. And the Cardinals signed a whole bunch of guys on Medicare. I mean, it's a bunch of old guys.
Yeah.
They shut down
signed
Sonny
3
Gray
starters
today.
over
I
30.
saw this morning they already shut down Sonny Gray for something. So, who knows what the Cardinals are. That's why I'm not afraid of anybody else.
They're going to have a whole lot of innings out of Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn. That's for sure. Those guys are horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're going to have
we
6 ERAs.
Yeah, maybe, but whatever.
I didn't think about something that Will brought up and something that I've noticed, but I don't hear many people talk about. Like, I think over the last 4 to 5 years, it feels like that the major league strike zone has been inching a little higher in terms of like where it should be compared to where they used to call it all the time. If I remember correctly, because usually a lot of times you weren't getting anything above the waist. Like when we were growing up, I feel like when we were watching this stuff, but like, I think since, I don't know, it's just something that I've noticed over the past 4 or 5 years. And even the umpires here have been inching up a little higher, and that true like letters to knees break zone where it's supposed to be.
Well, how much of it is that they're forced into it because now you got K zone and you're going to get dung on the on the review. So you better start calling it, because if this is really what the rule book says, and we've got a box that can show you where you've been missing your calls, you better start adjusting your zone behind the plate.
Especially if they're getting report cards after the game showing like the percentage of strikes they're missing and stuff. So makes sense.
Yeah, that's stuff they're going to have to figure
out. Rapid fire.
All right, rapid fire questions. Favorite golf movie?
Tin Cup.
Tin Cup. Not even close. Great movie.
Oh yeah.
Honorable mentions for Caddyshack and Happy Gilmore. But I think 100%. Tin Cup's a great movie. Have you ever been like starstruck in front of an athlete, or who's the most starstruck you've ever been? Person you've been in front of? Most starstruck you've ever been in front of an athlete?
Well, we heard Jack Nicholson.
Jack
Nicklaus.
Jack Nicklaus is
Nicholson's an actor.
By the time you have to interact with him, he's kind of like your grandpa, right? Like he's important, but he's just such a nice man.
Yeah.
I've interviewed Tiger once, so that one was one. Interviewing both Tiger and Phil, you knew you needed to bring. I don't know who I am, so like you needed to bring questions. So I admire athletes that force me to ask good questions. I don't like bad interviews or just interviews for the sake of going through the motions. So like Brooks Koepka, a hard interview. Like you want to ask him something that he's going to respect the question, or at least ask him a question that he's going to have to think about or provide a detailed answer. I wouldn't necessarily say starstruck to be in all of their presence. I've worked Pebble before, so I've done the Celebrity Saturday interviews. So I've been around athletes from other sports and movie stars and things like that. Man,
how scary is Clint Eastwood?
I've never met Clint. Never met the mayor there. Gosh, like I don't know. I've always subscribed to the fact I'd like to think that most of those folks aren't bigger than they truly are and don't treat themselves bigger than they truly are. I'm not famous by any stretch of the imagination. I'm never going to take myself so seriously. I always feel like I'm there to do a job. Let's do this job as professionally and as strongly as we possibly can. And I hope that there's some mutual respect in that they realize I'm taking the time to do it. I think that also probably cost me that wow and aura factor. I just try and look at everybody as a fellow human, right? Like just because there's a million things around you. So, no, I mean, I always tell people the most intimidating ever was an interview was I was in high school doing high school games, and I thought our coach was the most terrifying person. He was never like the friendliest guy. Like he wanted good questions. He was always like ornery and stuff like that. I was a 16-year-old, and I was always more terrified to interview him than I feel like I've been terrified to interview anybody else. But I mean, I've interviewed Trump. I've interviewed I'm trying to think of who else I've been around. I wasn't in person. I was on a 15-minute with Trump on the phone on Sirius XM, so it was not face to face. But I mean, like, I don't know. That's a good question, and I've already failed in the Star Trek. I would say, I mean, Tiger. The first time you're around Tiger, oh wow, that's Tiger freaking Woods.
Yeah.
You ever have a guy disregard your question, throw it out during one of the press conferences?
I had Ian Poulter once upon a time told me, came up, asked me to interview, looked at me and he said, I don't do interviews for radio. So I was fully dismissed just because of the outlet that I was on. At the time, it was at the Players Championship and I work for PGA Tour Radio. So I'm literally like, I can't even ask him hard hitting questions. Like I am working for the organization that he is a member of at this point in time. But it was beneath him to do an interview with him on the radio.
Damn, he totally big leagued you. Ian Poulter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ian Poulter of old bastard.
Who would have thought, right? And
Yeah.
shocking.
How many Ryder Cups have you done?
I've never worked the Ryder Cup.
Oh, okay.
I've never been to a Ryder Cup. I've worked 4 President's Cups, but I've never worked. I take that back. I've worked the Ryder Cup remotely, but I've never been on a Ryder Cup. But I've done some audio related pre and post game stuff for Ryder Cups before, but it doesn't count. I haven't been there. I don't have a logo ball from the Ryder. That's my logo ball collection's over there. So unless I have a ball from the event, I haven't worked it. That's correct.
I like that. Speaking of the players, so you doing the players this year since it's coming up?
I'm off this year for the players. So it's 2 straight with PGA National and Hill, and then not doing the players spring break for the kids. So it's time to go work on my team.
Nice. Work on your handicap too. What's your handicap?
Right now, well, that's a good question. I haven't posted a score since the end of last fall. I'm guessing I'm back to like a 0.8, 0.5, 0.8, somewhere in there. So
you're hanging around scratch somewhere.
Yeah, 0.8. There it is. Proof. There's, I can't see another thing. Nice. 0.8. Yeah.
We'll take your word for it. Yeah. What's the
way better than us?
Best or most memorable round you've ever played at like a famous course?
Oh, okay. I mean, I've played Riviera, I'm trying to think of the highest rated course I've played. I'm not like
you haven't played like
Hunter,
Page Black.
No, like
that course is supposed to be impossible.
We typically have the option of playing most of the places on the Monday after, but you've been there for a week. You know, I've got kids. My wife is working. I can't stay around an extra day. Sorry, I've been gone for 5 days working. I'm going to stay around an extra and play. Last year at Pebble, I couldn't get on Pebble. I was really hoping to, but I did on the way back to the airport play Pasatiempo, which is a top 100 course that I don't think gets enough love. The back nine at Pasatiempo is by far the best 9 holes ever played. It's one of the coolest little layouts and stuff. So I always tell people that that's one that's kind of, I guess, off of people's radar a little bit. But yeah, I've played the big ones here in the Midwest. Like I played Muirfield, I've played the Whistlings and Arcadia Bluffs and places of the world. But yeah, no Pine Valley story, no Augusta National story yet. I'd love to play Seminole. I think I'd be more excited to play Seminole than I would to even play Augusta or those places. I think there's enough ancient history. I think it'd be kind of cool to go and play a golf course like that. But yeah, I would say my most memorable is probably Riviera. I think it's the best golf course on tour. And there's nothing that's like super, super wow factor about it outside of maybe the 10th hole, because everybody talks about the short par 4. But the green complexes have cool spots. You just sort of feel like you're walking a golf course that has an aura to it when you're playing it. And that's to be said because there's really not a lot of, I would say, there's no ocean. There's no crazy body of water. It's just a golf course that just makes you feel like you're playing something special.
Seems like that's our favorite in general.
Yeah. And they're all probably immaculate, but like, what's the best clubhouse?
Oh man, there are so many good clubhouses. Yeah.
How about top
there's
3?
some that are massive. Olympia Fields has a big, like 60,000 square foot clubhouse. I would think that 100,000. Can't remember how it's up in Chicago. It's insane how big that place is. Sedgefield, we play the Wyndham Championship every year in Greensboro, has this old Tudor style clubhouse, which is really kind of cool. It's got some small rooms and some space. It's a really cool clubhouse. As a, I don't think I've ever. It's a Riviera's clubhouse is pretty sweet. It just sits up a hill and
On top of that hill, yeah.
at the first tee's right there. You just kind of spill out of this tiny little. The pro shop is teeny tiny. Yeah, those would be the ones that come to mind. I mean, Olympic Club, great clubhouse. That's also in California. Yeah, there's some good ones.
Yeah. Do you have any hole-in-ones? Have you ever seen one, been in a group of one in person?
No, I've seen them. I mean,
Yeah.
Never had one. I've actually made that my golf goal for 2024 is to have my first hole-in-one, which is not a smart goal.
Yeah, 'cause it's so random.
No way. It's so random. I always say this. So it was the year of the pandemic, and I was playing with some buddies here in town in Northwest Indianapolis. And we're up on this par 3, straight downwind. It was like 200 or something, 30 miles an hour wind at our back. So I hit a 6-iron. This thing is tracking. It's dead on. You see it bounce on the line, and we go down, and I think it pops out of the cup.
Oh,
So
my
I'm
God.
like, you've got to be kidding me. So we get up there, and during the pandemic, we put those little things on the holes.
Oh,
Yeah, the
no.
foam
Putter.
things.
No, it wasn't the foam. It was a thing where you would lift, you use your putter to lift it up, and it was spring activated. Well, the spring had busted, and it was flush with the hole. It was not down in the cup. So when we saw the ball bounce, it bounced off of that thing and out to like 2 inches. I think I posted on social media. I said, "Hey, look, does this count?" And everybody's like, "No, dude, it doesn't count. It doesn't because it didn't."
Where was it?
Hole. Brutal. It was at what's the one in Lebanon? Is that Trophy Club? Yeah, Trophy Club.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And then I'll never forget. I witnessed a hole-in-one. I was playing in this 9-hole church league. This is right after I graduated from college. I was looking for places to play, and there was this one guy, and he just wore me out. I mean, this guy was so positive, and I don't have a problem. I consider myself a positive person, but always wanted to talk, always wanted to say, like, just wouldn't stop. Like, we weren't the same personality, and he wouldn't let it go, wouldn't let it go. And like, I was a better golfer, but like, he always wanted to play with me, and because of connection and all this other sort of stuff. And he just wore me out. Super nice guy, like one of the nicest humans ever. 20-something years old, like I just wasn't the guy I wanted to hang with.
Yeah.
And then one day he like hoops one on this par 3 as we're playing, and he's like running, like going crazy. And I swear to you, I sit there, I looked up, I just stared up to God, and I was like, I get it, I understand, like message received. Join the others. You have delivered your message in the most cruel but appropriate way possible. I get it. I will be a better human being from this point forward. But yeah, and then the other one too is I've never called a hole-in-one. Called like 20 plus, but all of them we've known they were coming. So a lot of we get like you got a monitor or you do a remote or something like this, or I'm doing a show that's live to tape. And you see it or you heard a roar, so then you know they're going to show it on the TV. And so I called a lot of ones that I had to fake that it was a hole-in-one. But then this year when I was working Phoenix and Scottsdale on Sunday, Scheffler came this close.
So close. Oh my God. I remember that.
Really good on the radio, but that would have been unbelievable to be there.
Yeah.
Because I've called a couple when I've been the guy that's not been on site, because we have some guys that work each week and aren't on site, and we're calling off the monitors. So I've called like the Sam Ryder hole-in-one there, the Joel Damon hole-in-one. I called those off. I called those on tape. So I knew they were going in. Didn't know what the reaction was going to be like when they were going in, but then I was actually on site in the Coliseum, and Scheffler like hops it up and like took a peek and then spun it back. And that would have been unbelievable if that had gone in.
I got a quick.
You're probably wondering, like what's my. You're probably thinking, like, what is my reaction actually going to be when I see it live?
Yeah, quick hole-in-one story. Not me, but a buddy of mine was down in Florida playing wherever he was playing, and he was in foursome. He was the last group that was allowed to go out. He hits a hole-in-one, 118. goes into the clubhouse to, do the typical thing, buy everybody drinks and stuff. And while when he goes in, they were like, "Oh, sorry, clubhouse is closed. We can't." So we called one of the bars we run up here in Baltimore and bought every single person in the bar booze.
That's awesome. I hope he took the flag stick right out of the hole and just took it right to his car.
Yeah, I want to walk.
That's just so good. He went out of his way to buy beers because he wanted to celebrate the hole in one.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. You'd have to.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we've had you on for about an hour. Thank you for giving us so much of your time, man. Hopefully we can have you on sometime in the future. If you want to talk Cubs sometime in the middle of the summer, more than welcome to do that. Or if you have time later in the year, we can talk some more golf.
I'll be back on in October for our Cubs O's World Series. How about that? We'll make
so,
sense.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, the Jake Arrieta Bowl. I'm in.
Yeah. By the way, we appreciate you now. Sorry, huge fan of that trip. Cub Station.
Yeah. I'm sure you are.
All right, brother.
Thank you,
Hey,
buddy.
thanks for
Thank you
coming
very
on
much.
again. We'll ask you. You can catch him on PGA Tour Radio this week at Bay Hill. You'll be hearing him if you have Sirius XM. So yeah, thanks again, Will, and yeah, we'll see you soon. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
See you,
you.
boys.
Cheers.
See you, boys.
Absolutely.